Welcome in, everybody, to Birds 365, a Thursday edition of the show, joined by John McMullen, Eagles insider, Eagles beat reporter. I'm your host, Andrew Krause. Thanks for being here. Everybody, just 5 days away from the Philadelphia Eagles reporting to training camp. Johnny Mack, we have turned the corner, brother. We are right there. How you doing on this Thursday morning?
Doing well, yeah. We even got a schedule, so you can tell it's getting real. And yeah, they'll be on the practice field 10 a.m. Wednesday morning. Nick Sirianni's going to be talking at 9:30 before practice, as his typical want is in training camp. Felt early on he thought about that and wanted to get off the field as quickly as possible to get in and watch the film of practice. So he likes talking before practice. We as media people would probably like him to talk after practice, because then you can ask him about what happened, if there's injuries, but you take what you can get. So similar to last year's, and we'll see as far as the time and how much time they spend on the field. I think it's going to be a little bit more, but I don't think it's going to be crazy change from what you've seen in recent seasons.
Yeah, so you heard Johnny Mack say the time. So just for all of our listening audience and all of our loyal viewers who are here every morning, stay tuned. There might be a little bit of a change in the Birds 365 schedule. We want to continue to give you guys 2 hours of Eagles talk a day. So, with the schedule being so early for training camp and for the heat, we might change around a little bit when Birds 365 airs. So we will keep you posted exactly on when that is. Thank you all again for being here, for being so loyal to the show. We promise to provide you with that 2 hours each day. So that's what we will do for you guys. Johnny Mack, what are you thinking? Like 75 minutes, 80 minutes, 90 minutes? Last year it was what, 55 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have those 60, 70-minute practices. You're going to have 90-minute practices. Maybe you have a few, 140, maybe occasionally an hour and 40 minutes. But like I said, maybe you have a little bit more of those, but I don't think you're going to see the drastic change that some people were hoping for, because, I think the Eagles have made the right decision, to be honest, over the years, because, once the tipping point came and, a lot of work, the old school work, the two-a-days was legislated out of the game. You can't do it. Then it became a cost benefit thing where, all right, you can't prepare like you used to anyway. So I think it became the thought process of, let's get to week one as healthy as possible. I think that's been the Eagles' thought. I think it's the correct thought. But yeah, it leads to some sloppy play early, but that's everywhere,
Yeah,
because
especially with new coordinators, though. I think that's where it's, heightened a little bit this year.
yeah, and we're gonna have Aaron Schatz from FTN Football Almanac, Football Outsiders rebranded. So for people that understand that, we're going to have him on. And the numbers aren't great for teams typically who have two new coordinators. And you saw it last year. But the difference is these guys are experienced, so maybe it's a little bit less of an issue versus, say, last year when you had Brian Johnson as a first-time professional offensive coordinator, and Sean Desai, who had 1 year of experience but was new here. That's a lot different than Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. So, but generally, and we'll get Aaron to talk about this. Generally, two new coordinators is not a good thing.
Definitely not. Johnny Mack, let's continue real quick. We only have about 13 minutes until Aaron Schatz from FTN for the numbers joins our program. So we'll have him in hour number one. We will have Zach Berman from PHLY. You guys all know Zach Berman, I'm sure, obviously. A well-regarded Eagles beat reporter. So we will have him in hour number two. Zach Berman, excited to talk to him on the show. And then here we are in hour number one. Before Aaron Schatz, we're going to continue our training camp previews. Yesterday, we went through the linebackers. We've been working our way through the defense. Last week, we finished up on the offense. Johnny Mack, let's talk cornerback. Walk us through your preview at the open here of how you're seeing
Ah,
position
wow,
or
it's like your
training
head
camp.
spins. There's so many of them.
Yeah, it really is.
It's, there's 90. I mean, you can make an argument because James Bradbury, as long as he's here, they claim they're gonna move him to safety. We'll see how deep they go with that, but I think everybody knows he's a cornerback. And even some of the guys they've moved to safety, Mekhi Gardner being the latest, is has a cornerback background. Tristan McCullum has a cornerback background. Andre Sam has a cornerback background. I mean, it's like you got about 20 guys who can play corner. Even Sidney Brown is a safety. He played in the slot a bunch last year. Um, so they have so many bodies, and I think it's to the point of overcorrection because last year was such a disaster. Um, and they want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So the adage is that you never have enough corners in the NFL. Well, the Eagles are testing that because they have loaded up at the cornerback position, and there's a lot of upside, a lot of excitement, as well as I think there should be over the potential of this group. But you also got to be honest and realize there's going to be some growing pains, and much of the excitement is about completely unproven players. And but I'd rather be the Eagles this year than last year, certainly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They certainly put some assets into the position. My worry with the cornerback room, John, is that it's going to take a year, and obviously I don't think it will take a year. Hopefully we can, be formidable this year at the group, but they threw a lot of younger assets at it, a lot of young guys that don't have tremendous experience. It's not like they went out and signed a Darius Slay like they did when they picked up Slay, and you shored up the position immediately. So that would be my one big worry on it is how long does it take for some of these young guys to get up to NFL game speed? I feel great about how we're positioned at the room for 2025, but we're talking about 2024, and that's where I have concern is how quickly will these guys get up to speed and be able to be a viable NFL corner for the Eagles.
Well, we kind of talked about this yesterday a little bit with BLG, I think, Brandon Gouton, and the fact that from my standpoint, his prediction was Isaiah Rodgers is going to start opposite Darius Slay. And look, it wouldn't surprise me. He played tremendous in the spring, and that's the last thing everyone saw. So I don't think it's a wild prediction by any stretch, but I think it's the wrong way to go if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. And I point back to Kansas City a couple years ago, and you said you feel very comfortable. Maybe it'll take a year. I'm hoping it takes about half a year.
Yeah, that's fair.
So you're going to have growing pains, but I would advocate throwing Quinyon Mitchell into the deep end of the pool, Cooper DeJean into the deep end of the pool, and you're going to have some of those. And I always use Jim's term. Mike Rowe loves it as well. Startup cost. Got to get them over with. So get them over with talented players. And I think if the Eagles go any other direction, it's a mistake, to be honest. Now, you can throw Kaylee Ringo in there as well in the same category, but those three specific guys, get it over with. I think, and that doesn't mean, look, if they show up in the summer, if they show up next week and they perform horribly in camp, okay, then you go in a different direction. A, I don't think that's going to happen. They're too gifted. They're too talented. And B, but my point is, if Isaiah Rodgers plays a little bit better than Quinyon Mitchell, and you want to go the meritocracy route, you don't understand what this whole thing's about. I'm sorry. One player's got a tremendously high ceiling. Another player's a nice, solid player. Your goal is to get Quinyon Mitchell out there. Get him out there. You drafted him for a reason. Get the startup cost early. That's where I am with this group.
Yep.
And hopefully then by the second half of the season, like happened in Kansas City 2 years ago, all of a sudden these guys starts, the game starts slowing down. They get more comfortable and they start making plays, and you see the difference. That's the way I think the Eagles should go with this group.
Yeah, and that's how I felt about, the whole Isaiah Rodgers thing from jump. Is the business of the NFL going to get in the way of his playing time? If it plays out like you said, I would be perfectly okay with that, because I want the guy who's got the long-term future, who's got the upside, and who's under contract here in Philly for the next couple years. So that's how it could play out. We'll see how it does. John, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked our last couple guests. Who's going to be the starting corner opposite Darius Slay on Week 1 in Green Bay or in?
Well, I'm on Team Quinyon.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to get him out there. Opposite, again, if he has a terrible training camp, which I don't think is going to happen, he was very good in the spring. For all the talk of how good Rodgers and Ringo were, he was very good in the spring. So I don't see any evidence that he's going to have trouble. A lot of people talked about him playing at Toledo and not making the transfer and going somewhere else, and he had the opportunity to show his skill set against a higher level competition. I just think he's good. So get him out there. And I say the same thing about Cooper DeJean, and I think Avonte Maddox is really good if he's ever able to stay healthy. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but my sentiment's the same with Cooper. Get him out there. And they will, even if they're not starting, they're certainly going to be mixed in. Traditionally, cornerback's not a rotational position, but in this case, I think Vic is smart enough to know he's going to have to get these guys involved and stick their feet in the fire. So why not do it easy? Now, some people are going to hem and haw and say it's Green Bay Week 1, it's Jordan Love, it's all those explosive young receivers. Guess what? It's the NFL, man. It ain't getting any easier. Throw them in that pool. That's how I would say it.
Yeah, I could also make a case for Keely Ringo, but I guess he would be the guy on the other side backing up Darius Slay in case something were to happen to Slay. Is that how you see his role in the team?
Well, I pretty much put Kaylee. I should add him, and I did in the one. I put him in the same category, really. I think the Eagles have 3 good young prospects at cornerback, and he's the third. So he's in the mix as well. And everybody knows I have tremendous I like his upside. I think he's got a chance to be a really good corner in this league. And, you always go back to Andre Dillard and Jordan Mailata. All right, Andre didn't work out. You hope Quinyon works out. You hope Cooper works out. But if Kaylee Ringo works out and one of them doesn't, all right. Keep marching forward. And so I put them in the same category with those two guys.
Makes sense. Not a lot of time here to do a position that has so many damn bodies. So maybe we will circle back to finish it up. But Johnny Mac, who do you see staying on this roster? It's a deep unit. I mean, they're not going to keep everybody, obviously. They only got 53 slots on the roster. Who do you see as locks for this roster? Who's on the bubble and who's going?
Well, the locks are obviously Slay and Quinyon and Cooper and Kaylee and Rodgers. And I would say those are the absolute locks. I think Avonte's close to a lock. The only hesitation is obviously the injury parts. And the Eagles have adjusted the contract. So some of these young guys that we haven't talked about, like Tyler Hall, if they show that they can play, maybe you think about moving on, but I got Avonte at about 95%. And then it becomes, all right, Josh Jobe is maybe your best special teams player.
Right. So you got to start thinking about that back of the roster, different values at those spots.
And I think, the Eagles are going to go heavy at corner, light at safety to keep as many of their young corners as possible. Like, they don't want to lose Eli Ricks. You saw that last year. But, I mean, the numbers start to say he's got a tough road. And we're not even talking about guys like Zach McPherson anymore. Poor Zach, who's finally going to be cleared as training camp starts from his Achilles. He was going to be the backup slot corner. Now you can't even find a path for that poor guy to make this roster. Tyler Hall is another guy. How is he going to make this roster? So, Howie will try to manipulate it and get as many on the practice squad as possible, but they're probably going to lose an NFL level corner or two at the cut to 53.
Yeah, so we'll see how it plays out. This is a good little breakout here from Paul Mancini, just one of our chatters. Paul, thanks for being here, brother. He says, starting outside, Slay and Ringo, backup outside, Rodgers, Mitchell, slot nickel, Maddox, and Cooper DeJean. That's a pretty good breakout there on how it might play out with the cornerbacks. Obviously, there's a couple names that can be interchanged in terms of, maybe you have Mitchell starting over Ringo, but that's a pretty good rundown on how it might play out.
Yeah, those 6 guys are good bet, and they're probably going to keep a 7th. As I said, and go heavy at the position, but and because of the versatility, Navonte can play safety. Cooper, at least a lot of people project that he can play safety. The Eagles haven't put him there yet, so it's all a projection. But they do have some versatile guys as well. So I do think they're going to go heavy at corner to potentially keep as many of those young bodies as possible.
Let's get to our first commercial break. Johnny Mac, Aaron Schatz in the waiting room. Aaron Schatz, Chief Analytics Officer of FTN Fantasy for the Numbers, creator of the DVOA. So we will talk to Aaron Schatz coming up next on Birds 365. Thanks, everybody in the chat for being here this morning. Make sure you guys drop a like on the show to help us reach more Eagles fans. We appreciate you all being here. Stay tuned. Aaron Schatz coming up next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.